106 on the show here on KMOX. Chris Ranji, Amy Marscores, Kevin Wheeler with you here. Saw a study recently that, it rings with me because I'm an avid gamer. And by avid, I mean I play I play at least an hour or two pretty much every day. That would be, again, not always, but pretty much every day.
Wow.
And there's a new study out that shows that potentially that kids who play video games score higher on brain function tests than kids that don't, but they don't know if that's a chicken or an egg question yet. And that's part of the reason why we wanted to reach out to Leigh Richardson. Leigh is, of course, a licensed professional counselor, is the founder of the Brain Performance Center down in Dallas. And Leigh, first of all, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Leigh, we are very excited to have you on because finally we have an expert who is here to tell us why playing video games 14 hours a day is good for you.
So
well,
it's 2 hours.
So please go on. 14 hours a day. Good. Tell us why.
I can't do that. You make me laugh because it's funny. When we started off, somebody said, I play 1 to 2 hours a day. And I'm thinking, well, you wouldn't have even been included in the study because what they looked at were 9 to 10-year-olds that played at least 21 hours a week.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And there was all or nothing. You either played at least 21 hours a week or you didn't play at all. So you're looking at, and when you're 9 or 10, I'm not judging, but I think 3 hours a day is a lot of video games.
Mm-hmm.
It certainly can be, and I know that my rule, and again, I use this with my own kid, and Leigh, I'm not even kidding. I mean, I am still a grown person. I'm 50 years old, but I still play video games. And, my generation, I know, that's fine. My generation grew up with them, but they weren't then what they are now. But, I believe in playing sports and getting out and doing other things. Where is the area where we might want to have some concern? Is it when that playing is interrupting other things like exercise, like schoolwork? Because, my case is I do it instead of watching something on TV. Like if I'm going to be watching TV, I'd rather be playing a game. But I know that's not always the case.
Well, you make a very good point because when video games become a problem is when things get out of balance. You can't come down and have dinner with your family because you're too busy on your game. You're not going to bed when you should. You're staying up beyond the allowed time and you're playing games. And you don't even take I've had kids as clients that don't even take the time to eat. And when they do, it's a bag of chips or a bag of cookies in the room. That's not healthy. So it's all about balance. Because the study did show that the kids that were playing the games, their brains behaved differently than the kids that weren't playing. So there is some goodness in games. It's just keeping it in balance.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, the study showed that it couldn't prove that there were improvements in brain function, but that they had brains that behaved differently. So I guess my first point of parliament is, does it matter which type of games the kids were playing, whether it was like a Call of Duty or a Madden or a racing game or Grand Theft Auto or whatever it may be?
Or even Minecraft, which is really popular with the kids that age.
Well, and the study did not address that. Personally, I think it would matter. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a lot more emotional involvement in some games than there is others. And the study talked about having the intent to develop games as a cognitive learning tool. Well, not all games are.
Right. And then also with the games, because we were comparing the kids who played 21 hours a week of video games to kids who did not log those kind of hours on video games. But do we know if the kids who weren't playing video games were doing something else like TikTok? They were on social media for that many hours versus video games?
No, we don't, but that would be a really interesting comparison because honestly, I think social media has its own challenges.
What are as far as you can tell, because we were always told when I was a kid, when people were saying video games are bad for you, but there's a hand-eye coordination thing that you are developing by playing them. Do we know what the benefits are? Do we have I'm sure we have a good idea, but do we know definitively what the benefits are?
Well, we know that good eye-hand coordination improves our response time in doing things like catching a ball. We know that what the study showed is that the kids that play in excess of 21 hours a week, their frontal lobes are more activated. Well, the way the brain develops is that your frontal lobes, that's the last part of the brain that develops, and it's not fully developed until your mid to late 20s. So it makes sense to me if you're exercising that part of the brain and paying attention, and we all pay very close attention when we're really interested in something. Mm-hmm. It's hard to when we're not. But it makes sense to me that brain would be more engaged when playing the games.
Leigh Richardson is with us, licensed professional counselor. I mentioned the founder of the Brain Performance Center down in Dallas, but also the author of the book, Turn on Your Brain to Get Your Game On, the how, what, and why to peak performance. So let's tap into that peak performance concept here, because clearly too much of anything is going to be a problem, right? Too much video games, too much of anything is going to lead to that. If you're looking at trying to optimize this kind of thing, not just video game, of course, but tying this into a young person's habits or even an adult's habits, what have you found as the keys to making sure that you're able to kind of maximize what you're capable of when it comes to balancing these different elements?
Well, you use the right word, and that's balance. Video games, social media are things that are easy to do and to fill our time with. But are they productive? Do they bring goodness? Do they help us as a family member? Do they help us engage in our family more? Do they help us contribute? And I think even as a kid, we all have a community that we live within. And we all, even at a young age, need to think about how we contribute, how we interact. And if those games or social media are running interference and interfering with the goodness that we have going on every day, then it's too much.
It would be so interesting to look at the brain activity, not so much in gamers versus non-gamers, but gamers versus kids who are watching TV versus kids who are on TikTok versus kids who are playing a musical instrument, kids who are reading, and then kids who are just playing, like the old school imaginative play. And I guess all of those things combined is a well-rounded kiddo. But you've got to think that each one of those activities is growing the brain or challenging the brain in different ways.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of research that shows music and the benefits that brings to the brain. And with playing, that unleashes our creativity. So they all have a role to play in the brain. And as that brain develops, that brain gets better and better at adding more dimension and being able to deal with more abstract thinking.
So anybody listening to this right now, beyond the adults in this room who like to play video games, we could figure it out for ourselves. But you might be listening and thinking, okay, my kid plays a lot. What's too much? And how do I set boundaries beyond, you could just tell hey, stop playing video games. But usually there's a fight there. Yeah. So what's a good way to set boundaries for a parent to actually break through to a kid who might be playing too much, and what is too much?
Well, I think it all starts with what is the kid playing? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times parents don't even know, because I'll ask them, you think Johnny plays too much video games. What's he playing? Well, I don't know. Well, there's the very first thing. Know what your child is playing. Play that game with your child. Experience with them so that you have a better mindset to know what boundaries are necessary. Because I think that everything is age dependent and everything is how it fits for the family. And if there's only one gaming unit, then that we all got to share. We all have to get our turn. So I think that it's a lot more complicated than just saying you can play for 45 minutes on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I've worked with parents that have done that, and it usually doesn't work too well. So get involved in their gaming and understand it and help them to understand what's reasonable.
Leigh, great information. Thank you for joining us, and also thank you for not tearing me apart too much. I appreciate your knowledge and expertise in this stuff. It was a great conversation.
Call Kevin a loser. Call Kevin a loser for playing video games.
Thanks so much for having me.
You got it. That's Leigh Richardson, licensed professional counselor, founder of the Brain Performance Center down in Dallas.